So Jesus was called God in the New Testament, but so was Moses in the Old Testament. So let's get into it. Moses was described as God. We read in Exodus chapter 4 verse 16, Moses is described as God to Aaron. Exodus chapter 7 verse 1, Moses as God to Pharaoh. So if you read Exodus chapter 4 verse 16 and Exodus chapter 7 verse 1, if you read it in Greek, if you read the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. If you read Exodus chapter 4 verse 16 and Exodus chapter 7 verse 1, the same Greek word is used for both verses. Uh, and this word theos is also used in the New Testament. So I have the Greek word theos right there, and this is the same word used in the New Testament. Like when the doubting Thomas, when Jesus comes to doubting Thomas, and the doubting Thomas says, "My God and my Lord," after touching Jesus. Well, the same Greek word used in the Gospel of John is used in Exodus chapter 4 verse 16 and Exodus chapter 7 verse 1. Theos. Theos means, God. So the Old Testament is basically saying that Moses is God or as God. Uh, and that same Greek word is used in the New Testament. So being called God, so Jesus being described as God does not mean he is God or equal to God, because if you read the Old Testament, the same exact word is used, and Moses was called God in at least two places in the Old Testament. So it's not a unique term to Jesus. It was used in the Old Testament, and the reason why Moses is called God is he's a representative of God, or he is representing God. It doesn't mean he's equal to God. So that's the correct Greek used, or the Greek word used in the Bible. So the conclusion here is being called God in the Bible does not mean you're literally God or equal to God. Being called a God in the Bible is in the sense of someone representing God. It just means a positive representative sense. So Moses is a representative of God being called God. Same thing with Jesus. Jesus is a representative of God or an agent of God. Doesn't mean he's equal to God. Just like Moses is an agent of God or representing God. It just means the Greek word is used in a positive representative sense. The same Greek word theos is used in the Greek Septuagint Old Testament and the Greek New Testament. So uh, if you research that Greek word, it's used in the Old Testament and New Testament, and it's used in the Old Testament to describe Moses. So being called God doesn't mean you're equal to God, just a representative of God.